various stuff, and it's only if you want to. So I'm not going to, with younger ones, that's painting by numbers, and it's quite intricate, so I'm going to keep it away from the do you like painting stuff? So would you like me to move over? So yeah, and if you want to finish it, take it home. And then we've got a puzzle, which I'm going to mention in the service. So what I'll do is I'll bring it over and want to show you. And that's a bit old for some of them, but then for the younger ones, I've got some colouring in it. Word search, so yeah. Good morning, everybody. Such a buzz this morning. It's lovely to see everyone chatting or sitting in silence, whatever you're doing. It's lovely to see. Be yourself when you come to this church. We encourage all of ourselves to be ourselves. So don't feel you have to do anything, say anything. Stand up when you don't want to, sing when you don't want to, say amen when you don't want to. Please be yourselves. There's going to be a few notices now, a few more than usual. First of all, John Morecambe, who has been a member for a long time, getting more and more frail and in a wonderful care home for quite a while. And he died a few weeks ago. And I know some of you don't know John, some of us know John very well. And it's always sad, isn't it? But this doesn't make up for it. But he died ever so peacefully. And there were people with him when he did die. I've been talking to his niece in Greece, and we'll be arranging the service together, and I'll be letting you know, probably within the next 3 weeks or so, but I'll be letting you know about that. We continue with our 7-part series looking at the Chronicles of Narnia, and just briefly, briefly say, in case anybody's interested, Rowan Williams, not Rowan Atkinson, Rowan Williams has written a wonderful book, and Rowan Williams Insights. So there's 2 copies of that, so feel free to come and borrow them and return them as and when you can. Love Rowan Williams, fantastic. Quite like Rowan Atkinson actually as well. We have lots of resources today. We're looking at the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and if you would like to borrow that, now that I've read it and digested it, then feel free to borrow that. For the younger people, they're doing a painting by Numbers of Aslan, who is the Jesus, the Christ figure. You probably know this in the story. And also we have a really beautiful wooden puzzle of Aslan here, which I'm going to bring over if anybody wants to do that as well. For the younger ones, when they come in, they've got a word search, they've got other colouring as well. If any of you in this series want to explore the inner child, feel free to tear out one of the colouring things and have a colour and go on, you know you want to. What's the other message? Peter Holloway, next Sunday, and I really wish I was going to be here. I'll be catching up online. We'll be exploring during the sermon contemplative practices and sharing, I think, some of own experiences about that. So really look forward to that. We have a church meeting. Again, Baptist churches they're wonderful, but they can be confusing if you don't have that kind of background. But we have church members, and that means every now and then, usually about 4 times a year, we have a church members meeting. We have one on the 16th of February, and every time I say, please do all you can if you're a member to come to that. I know it's sacrificial. Some people really struggle to come out in the evenings. And mentioned last Sunday that for leadership here, I wonder if somebody could help Gillian there, that'd be great. For leadership here, when we're discerning who comes in and to be a trustee, we look at character, competence, not confidence actually. In fact, confidence hasn't always been a feature. It's often been people saying, I don't know if I can do this. So then you check out another C, which is calling. And mentioned last week that we have been discerning, listening to you, talking to them, and very much on the deacons' hearts. The proposal is that Frida Ranger will come back onto the leadership team, and so another good reason to come to the church meeting. Next Sunday is also communion as well. For our covenant service, another really, really important part of being this type of church together, where we recommit to each other, recommit to God. Church members, celebrating membership, because membership is so key, so wonderful, but it doesn't mean we don't value people who aren't members either. You're just as much part of our church, but it gives people an opportunity to be considering maybe membership will be something further down the line that I might be considering. Some people use the covenant service to explore things like, if I'm not baptized as a believer, might I be open to doing that one day? So very, very broad in many ways. But we're also having fish and chips and other options from Chipwicks on that day. So Villy is going to be going around and getting names. Please come along. If you're here this morning, you're more than welcome to come along and join us for the meal afterwards. There is a voluntary contribution. It doesn't cover each meal actually, but we're suggesting if people can afford it, to pay about £10 for themselves. Anonymously, if you can afford more, then you might want to cover other people as well. But again, that is totally anonymous. I was having a coffee with a minister the other day, and he is fascinated about our church. And I was talking about our culture and who we are as a church. And he quoted a Lutheran pastor in America, Nadia Bolz-Weber. People heard of Nadia? Wow, yeah, a few. Wow, if you haven't, please check out the books. And she actually came to speak at Brighton, at One Church Brighton, a few years ago. Amazing, amazing person. And came from a very addictive background. and started a church in America which is called For Saints and Sinners, intentionally, and it had a very broad variety of people who didn't feel comfortable in other churches on the whole. And I love this, what the minister said, the quote, "When new people came to the church," so if you're new, relatively new, this is what Nadia would be saying to you. "You will be disappointed here. You will be disappointed. If you're not disappointed already, you will be." That was her words. And she offers that not as a warning, but as a gift of honesty. Because covenant relationship, journeying together, is actually not just when everything is going really well and we feel really good, but it's when problems arise, difficulties arrive, differences arrive, that is covenant relationship. So a lovely quote, and you can read more about that in the news sheet if you'd like to. I'm going to have some words on the screen if you can see them. They're quite small this morning. But if you can see them and you'd like to, let's say them together. Jesus' words. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Maybe for another day we're doing that. Please have a seat. Going to ask Mark to come forward now, and each time we look at another book, we have a little overview of the book. So here we have that, and thank you, Mark, for doing this.
Thank you. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader begins with a boy who is very sure of himself. His name is Eustace, and Eustace is not the sort of child who believes in magic or wonder or Narnia. He believes in facts, in being right, and not being taken in by things. He likes rules, he likes order, and he likes feeling superior. He also likes telling people what they're doing wrong. He doesn't mean to be unkind, but doesn't quite know how to not to be, because somewhere along the way he has learned that the safest place is to stand above all things, detached, unimpressed, and in control. So when Eustace is pulled into Narnia along with Lucy and Edmund, he arrives already defended. And that matters. Because The Voyage of the Dawn Treader is not really a story about travelling across the sea. It is a story about what happens when people slowly wake up to who they really are. The ship itself is sailing east towards the rising sun on a mission to find lost lords and to set wrongs right. But what becomes clear very quickly is that the real journey is happening inside the people on board. They travel from island to island, and each place exposes something different: fear, temptation, pride, greed, and longing. And slowly, often without realizing it, the masks begin to slip. Eustace, of course, hates all this. He hates the discomfort, the lack of control, the fact that he is not the cleverest one in the room anymore. Because he doesn't know how to be vulnerable. He becomes critical instead, sarcastic, distant. He protects himself with superiority. And then, one night, after sneaking away from the others, he finds a cave. And inside it is treasure, gold, jewels, riches. And he falls asleep on it. When he wakes up, he has become a dragon. Not metaphorically, actually, with scales and claws, fire, wings. And this is where C.S. Lewis does something extraordinary, because Eustace hasn't really become something new. He has become visible. Outwardly, he now looks like what he has been living like on the inside: armoured, untouchable, dangerous if approached, unable to be embraced, and unable to be close. At first he is furious, ashamed and panicked, and then something begins to happen. He realizes he can't go back. He can't just fix himself. He tries, of course. He literally claws at his own skin, trying to peel the dragon off, but every layer reveals another one underneath, thicker, harder, just still not him. And that is when Aslan appears, not with anger, not with accusation, but with invitation. Aslan tells him that he will have to let him do it. When Aslan begins to move the scales, it hurts. Not because Aslan is cruel, but because Eustace has been living inside this armour for so long that it has become a part of him. And finally, it comes away. He steps into the water, not as a dragon, but as a boy. Not improved, but restored. Not fixed, but revealed. This moment is the heart of the book, because the Voyage of the Dawn Treader is not becoming better people. It's about becoming truer people, about shedding what we have put on to survive, and discovering that what we thought was our identity was actually our defense. This is also where justice quietly shows up in the story, not as punishment, not as payback, but as restoration. In Narnia, justice is not about getting what you deserve. It is about getting what you really are. Things are not made right by being shamed. They are made right by being seen, by being named, and by being healed. And this happens again and again across the voyage. Lucy wrestles with comparison and envy. Caspian wrestles with what kind of king he is becoming. The others are tempted by invisibility, by power, by comfort, by escape. But what's striking is that no one is shouting into transformation. They are awakened into it. Each time it begins with noticing. Notice what is happening inside them. Notice what they are running from. Notice what they're clinging to. Notice what they're becoming without meaning to. And then slowly, they begin to choose something else. This is not a story about heroes who already know who they are. It is a story about people discovering themselves as they go. Learning that bravery is not loud, that courage is not performance, that goodness is not proving, and that growth is not forcing. It is consenting, letting yourself be known, letting yourself be changed back to who you really are. And perhaps more importantly, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader is a story about longing, The farther east they travel, the lighter everything becomes. The water grows clearer, the light grows stronger, and people begin to sense they are moving towards something they cannot quite name. Towards home, towards truth, towards who they were always meant to be. Some of them realize that they don't want to come back because they have tasted what it feels like to be awake, to be real, and to be unarmored. And when the voyage finally ends, not everyone is the same, but everyone is more themselves, which is perhaps C.S. Lewis's quiet way of saying that justice is not when people are corrected, justice is when people are restored, when they are no longer trapped inside what they have become, and finally free to be who they are.
Please have a seat. Each Sunday, for each book that we're looking at, we have a monologue, and it is fictional. It is fictional. It's not about the person who's reading it, but John is reading and being our monologue this morning.
When I think back to being a child, I remember being quite open, easy with myself and easy with other people. I laughed without thinking about it. I cried even when things upset me. I felt things in my body without needing to explain them or manage them. I didn't stand outside myself very much. I just lived. I remember being carefree with my friends, not worrying how I came across. I remember the strange, tender delight I felt for a caterpillar I once found in the garden. The way I watched it for ages, as if it mattered more than anything else I was meant to be doing. I remember feeling at home, outside, in sand and mud, insects and animals, clouds and bright days, and stars at night. And the quiet wonder of looking out to sea while building sandcastles, completely absorbed. I wouldn't have had words for any of that then. I didn't call it joy or presence or freedom. It was just how I was. Somewhere along the way, that began to change. Not suddenly. No one ever said, don't be yourself or stop feeling. But you still learn. You learn what fits and what makes things awkward. So you adapt. You learn how to keep going, how to quieten things down inside, how to stay sensible, steady, contained. And after a while, that version of you starts to feel like the real one. I wouldn't have called it hiding. That would have felt too dramatic. And I wasn't aware that what I was doing anyway. It was more like self-editing, keeping things neat, not letting anything spill. I told myself this was just being grown up. But when you live like that for a long time, something shifts. You stop noticing how much effort it takes. You stop noticing how often you ignore what your body is telling you, what you feel. You forget what ease feels like. Lately, I've been realizing how much of my energy goes into staying composed, into not needing too much, not relying on anyone too much, not letting myself feel something unless I can keep it under control. I've also started noticing the quieter ways I try to stay in control, how I sometimes talk too much, jump in before others have finished, fill the space with my own words instead of really listening. And I can see now that it's not because I have more to say, but because I'm trying to manage the moment. I caught myself the other day standing in the kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil and suddenly thought, you're holding yourself very tightly. Once you notice something like that, it's hard to unsee it. I've started paying attention to the small things, how I brace myself before certain conversations, how quickly I say, I'm fine, even when I'm not sure that I am, how I make myself useful so I don't have to be vulnerable. It's not that I'm unhappy, I just don't always feel very close to myself. And what's strange is that I've been remembering things, little flashes, sometimes in dreams, the way I used to laugh, the way I used to cry without apologizing, the way my whole body used to be involved in what I loved. Somewhere along the way, I drifted from that, not deliberately. I think I just learned that it felt safer not to feel so much, safer not to trust what was happening inside me, safer to stay steady than to stay open. And then, slowly, I began to notice things. I slowed down enough to pay attention to how quickly I brushed past my own feelings, to how often I stayed composed instead of being present. And slowly, very slowly, I realized that with one or two people at first, and then with a few more, I could be myself and not be judged or frowned upon. I could say what I really felt without being corrected or quietly shut down, without someone trying to fix me, when all I wanted was to express what was going on inside me. And as I noticed that, something began to loosen, not because I tried harder, not because I fixed myself, but because awareness and being met with kindness made things gentler. I can't really explain it. I just know I've started to breathe a little more deeply. I've started to notice things again, small things, ordinary things, a warmth I hadn't realized I'd been missing. And slowly, very slowly, I've been coming back to myself. Not to some ideal version, just to something truer, less armored, more real, more me. All this growth didn't begin when I worked out what was wrong with me. It began when I started noticing how I am and remembering how I was, when I felt safe enough to stop holding myself together so tightly. And coming home, really coming home has turned out to be less about becoming someone new and more about remembering who I was before I learned to be so careful.
From heaven you came helplessly, entered our world, your glory veiled, not to be served but to serve, and give your life that we might live. This is our God, the servant King. He calls us now to follow Him, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to the servant King. There in the garden of tears, my heavy load He chose to bear. His heart with sorrow was torn, yet not my will, but yours, He said. This is our God, the servant King. He calls us now to follow Him, to bring our life as a daily offering of worship to the servant King. Comes His hands and His feet, the scars and speak of sacrifice, and set from stars into space, to cruel death surrender. This is our God, the servant King. He calls us now to follow Him, to bring our life as a daily offering of worship to the servant King. So let us learn how to serve, and in our lives enthrone Him, each other's needs to prefer. For it is Christ who's there. This is our God, the servant King. He calls us now to follow Him, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to the servant King. This is our God, the servant King. He calls us now to follow Him, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to the servant King.
Let's have a seat and a short time of prayer. So if you feel comfortable, maybe you'd like to close your eyes, but again, if you feel comfortable. That's a dangerous song. I was thinking that's a dangerous song. We started with a reading My yoke is easy, Jesus says, my burden is light. And we sing, help us give our loves as a daily offering, help us be servant-like. The danger is if we try to be servant-like and we can do all of that without grace, without God. And that's why I think, more and more, the importance of the inner transformation. I think that's the heart of discipleship. And it's our doing overflowing from our being and who we are becoming. And that's how the yoke can be easy and the burden light. If that resonates, maybe during this time of silence, you might like to offer between you and God the heart of who you are, your mind, your heart, your body, the whole of who you are, nephesh, and invite God to continue to do the good work he is doing in you until that day he will bring it to completion. Let's have a moment's silence. Colours of the lights on the platform, the yellow and the blue, are the colours of the Ukrainian flag, and they will be like that until the end of the war. And as we hear God's call, perhaps, for us to become more Christ-like in terms of humility, other-centeredness, love, gentleness, kindness, then too easily we look at world leaders who seem to be displaying the opposite. Lord, together we pray that you soften the hardest of hearts. You open the eyes of those who see perhaps the least about themselves, about truth, and all the fruit that you talk about, Christ, that you overflow. It seems so opposite to what is overflowing on the world stage, but yet we believe there are many leaders out there who, like us, are mixed. And we simply lift them up to you, even the most hardened, the most dragon-like, and pray that your Spirit softens, opens ears, opens eyes, opens hearts. And Lord, by your Spirit, may you bring more healing, more peace to individuals and to this world. And may, Lord, alongside our prayers, those of us who have the ability to give something financially, time, presence even, to make a difference to the people of Ukraine who are being starved, who are being frozen through wickedness. We pray for the people in Russia who are mixed. And Lord, again, may you open up eyes and soften hearts. May we all, wherever these conflicts are going on around the world, may we all see a common humanity. And help each of us as we leave this building today to see a common humanity with people who are like us and people who are different. Amen. Going to invite Hilary to come, and as you listen to this reading, a thought, who do you relate to more out of the characters? So from Luke chapter 18.
To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, "God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give 1/10 of all I get." But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, "God, have mercy on me, a sinner." I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted.
Quite interesting. I find it interesting, maybe some of you do, with contemplative practices in mind, sometimes listening or reading part of Scripture and all the different characters and trying to think, who do I relate to? Can I see myself in each of these people, one of them, both, whatever? This morning, the title is Shedding. So Jesus tells this story about 2 people who go to the temple to pray, a Pharisee and a tax collector. And I think, I've heard this many times, you perhaps have as well, the parable's often flattened into a neat moral lesson. One proud, one humble. One bad, one good. Don't be like the Pharisee, be more like the tax collector. But I think, as Jesus always did, is doing something much deeper. I don't think he is offering this binary moral stereotype that we can all fall into and see other people within. I probably did in that prayer I just prayed. Like all of us in the parable, both men are mixed. Both made in the image of God, bear something of God within them. Both carry this original blessing, God's creation, you are tov, you are good. But both defended, both have their stuff, both miss seeing themselves, not totally seeing themselves as they are. None of us can, none of us do. We can more so, perhaps. Both trying in different ways to navigate life. Are you trying to navigate life? Do you find life really, really easy or really, really complicated, or a mixture of the two? The Pharisee isn't pure evil, and the tax collector isn't pure virtue. They aren't opposites. They're mirrors, if you like. If you want them to be, they can be mirrors inviting us, inviting you and me to recognize something of ourselves in each of them. We are all saints and sinners, somewhere on that spectrum. I found it fascinating. I heard this the other day, that, you know Hollywood films? I remember watching as a boy, seeing the goodies and the baddies, but things haven't changed much, that you often have the goodies and the baddies, and the goodies always win. Well, apparently with Korean films, anybody seen a few Korean films? Amazing films. Apparently part of their culture is very different to Hollywood, that all of the characters within the films are a mixed bunch, capable of not so good things, but good things. And even the villains, or the more villainous, I should say, within the films, do something which is kind or loving. So much more non-binary than Hollywood can sometimes fall into. The parable goes alongside the story, the book of C.S. Lewis that we're looking at this morning, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, in which C.S. Lewis is asking the same question through story, not how do you become good? Does that feel exhausting? How do you become good? How do you become better? I think, as I read it, C.S. Lewis is asking, how do you become real? And the answer in both cases is the same. By shedding what isn't really us, what isn't really you. Different words for it: false persona, masks, outdated defences. Not wicked, but defended. I think whenever we find ourselves giving, for example, pats on the back, do you ever pat yourself on the back? Can be healthy, can be unhealthy. Or trying to look good, projecting an image for everybody to see, a bit of self-inflating. The truth is, and we can be gentle with ourselves, it's often because that deep sense of being enough was lacking in earlier life. It's never perfect for any of us, however good the parenting of us was. But for some, there can be even less. Where affirmation is missing, we learn to manufacture it. Very clever, very protective. When love feels conditional, what do? We learn to perform. And this, I've written down, this usually overflows into adulthood. I think it always overflows into adulthood, where someone can even look confident on the outside because they've been very good at putting this image out there and even believe it themselves to some extent, but they never quite feel good enough on the inside. Sometimes it shows up as pride. But again, pride isn't confidence. It's not security. It's a defense in itself. It's what we do perhaps when we fear that we might be small. What if I'm actually that small? That we might be ordinary. What if I'm ordinary? Unseen. What if people don't really notice me? Or unworthy? And it's how our ego, which is there to try to do its best it can to defend us, helps to make us try to feel safe. The Pharisee's contempt for others doesn't come from inner strength, but from fragility. It arises from a fragile, false self that needs comparison. This is what I'm like, that's what you're like. This is me, that's you. In order to feel okay. And the Pharisee doesn't recognize himself in all of this. He doesn't know this is going on, perhaps. He is what a lack of self-awareness can look like. When we don't see ourselves clearly, we begin to project our shadow, the stuff we don't like about ourselves but's there, onto other people and punish it in them. We look down on people in order to feel up. We judge others in order to feel better about ourselves. And yes, the classic log splinter. This isn't wickedness. Think with grace. This isn't wickedness. It's a defense. Defenses in themselves aren't sins. They're strategies. They are the ways we learned often before we had language or choice. How to feel safe. How to feel we belong. How to avoid feeling shame. Or so we don't feel overwhelmed. Again, I would encourage you to have compassion for that young child that you were once and that child that is still within you. Some of us learned within all of this to be useful. Some of us learned to look strong. Some of us appear to look good. Some of us to be impressive. Some of us to be invisible. Don't put your head above the parapet in case you're seen, and then you might be criticized. Some to be agreeable. Some to be self-sufficient. I can do this on my own. I don't need help. Some to try and control others, and it could be through conversation. Keep on talking so they can't get in. They can't get in past my defense. These weren't conscious choices on the whole. They were adaptations. We are so clever at adapting as young people, as children, as infants. And for a time, they probably worked. They probably worked for me, and yours probably worked for you, kind of. But once these things that helped us survive, they can also keep us stuck. I came up with this idea. You know jiu-jitsu? Like some of the martial arts where something comes for you, so you deflect, you push to the side, you use the energy in a different way. I think defenses can be like psychological and emotional jiu-jitsu. Something comes our way, we can't handle it, so we deflect it in some way, or we ignore it. But what gives us that sense of protection once does end up, I believe more than anything, imprison us. What helped us cope can eventually stop us from being fully alive. That's Eustace in the story. That's the Pharisee in the parable. Waking up. The tax collector often gets treated as the role model of the story, doesn't he? Model him, follow him, imitate him. And in one sense he is, because Jesus says he is the one who goes home justified. But what Jesus isn't doing, I don't see it, he's not presenting him as spiritually whole. What we see here isn't so much health as it is a kind of exposure. He beats his chest. He refuses to look up and names himself as a sinner. I think we need to be careful here, because shame, this powerful, awful thing, shame, isn't the same thing as humility. And self-contempt isn't the same thing as spiritual maturity. Calling yourself worthless means you're actually not seeing yourself as you are, because you are not worthless. Far from it. What Jesus contrasts here isn't so much arrogance and humility, or good people versus bad people, but defense versus presence. The Pharisee is armored with achievement. The tax collector is unarmored, because he's run out of strategies. The Pharisee performs. The tax collector simply stands there. The Pharisee manages his image, even before God tries to. The tax collector has stopped managing. Breakthrough, I believe, I know. Breakthrough often comes after breaking, when the mask, the presentation, the image can no longer be maintained. When I've reflected on my life with another person, always good to do, because you can see yourself more clearly with the right person. There is a pattern of ashes, phoenix rising out of the ashes, breaking, breakthrough. This is why I believe it, not just intellectually. Jesus then said something really key. The tax collector went home justified. And this Greek word, dikaio, means put right, restored, realigned, made whole. We might say he goes home to himself, because he stops performing. And that's exactly what we see a little bit in the story, a big bit in the story with Eustace. He doesn't change because he's punished. You naughty person, get better, do more, try harder. He changes because he sees who he has become. And he sees that he has become a dragon. He was a dragon before he became a dragon. He was dragon-like before he became a dragon. That's what C.S. Lewis is painting the picture of. He has been living as a dragon, with layers, with defenses, with scales that stop people coming in. So what happens to him isn't retribution. It's revelation. He wakes up and discovers what he's been living as. And I think this can happen in a similar way for you and for me. We don't decide to become defended as children, as infants. We drift there, we adapt. Very clever again. We learn methods that help us feel safe. And then as adults, something can help us see ourselves as we are, how we have become. And it's not because God miraculously flicks a light switch and we see, oh, wow, that would be a bit harsh, very harsh. But I think it's when we become open enough, slowly, and trusting enough to notice. God doesn't force awareness. Not the God I know. God invites it. And it has to be gentle, because the seeing in itself can be painful, not because it's punishment from God, but because the truth disrupts what we've tried to put together, protects us. It can actually bring it into the light. But it is also, this is the good news, the beginning of freedom. Aslan, the Christ figure, God says, let me undress you. In the story, let me undress you. Once Eustace realized he's a dragon, that picture of his false self, his first instinct, do you relate to this, was to fix himself. He scratches, he peels, he struggles, tearing away layer after layer of skin, convinced that if he just works hard enough, he can get back to being human again. What does that remind you of? It reminds me of the purity and effort model so familiar in so many churches. Just become better. Just become more moral. Just become more holy. You can do it. You can do it. You can. But every time he succeeds in removing a layer, Eustace discovers that underneath he's still a dragon. Lewis's imagery here is so profound, so beautiful. He's showing that self-improvement doesn't equal transformation. Willpower, however much you try to be that devout Christian, harder, it can't reach the deepest layers of the full self. Technique can't undo what was formed through fear, shame, and adaptation. Effort alone can't bring us home. I know that as well. I know that really well because I tried all that for many years. Didn't work. Then Aslan, the Christ figure, appears in the story. He doesn't lecture Eustace, he doesn't shame him, he doesn't threaten him. He simply says these words: "You'll have to let me undress you." That's grace. Eustace can't save himself or peel himself back to the true self. He can only consent. None of this is about effort. It's about trust, not self-mastery, but surrender. Not collapse, but open to being loved, to be known and touched in the very places he learned to protect, we learned to protect. When Aslan, this is a scary bit, when Aslan begins to undress him, it hurts. Not because Aslan, not because God is cruel, but because armor is heavy. Armor and defenses run deep. It feels like they become us. Pain doesn't always mean something's wrong in this process. Sometimes it marks the moment love reaches the places closed for a long time, for a very long time. This isn't a God who wounds. It's a God who heals. Grace doesn't storm the walls of your defenses, the castle that we've built up. Grace waits. Grace asks permission. And in all of this, what gets removed isn't Eustace. It's what Eustace learned to become. The beginning, not the end. After Aslan undresses Eustace, he then invites him into the water. There's something so baptismal, I'm pointing here for those who don't know, the baptismal pool is behind me, about this moment in the book. Not as magic, not as instant perfection, but as a sign. Baptism, it doesn't mark the beginning of God working in us. God's already been at work long before baptism. I think it's more about the outward expression of what's already happening internally. A public yes to a quiet interior transformation that's going on. An intention, awareness, choice. I intend to carry on walking forward with Christ and saying yes, being open to the healing work of grace. And baptism isn't the end of transformation. Those of us who have been baptized know this full well. But it isn't the beginning either. It's a threshold, a moment of consent. Eustace isn't suddenly in the story made perfect. You know Eustace. He was so annoying in the story. He doesn't suddenly become perfect. That would be unreal. But there is some kind of improvement. He's kinder, although not flawless. He still slips back in the rest of the story into old habits. He still struggles. The undragoning of Eustace isn't the finishing line. And if you and I imagine transformation as a moment, everything after that, every relapse you have and I have can feel like failure. I failed again. I tried really hard, but I failed again. But if transformation is a lifelong process, then struggle becomes part of the learning. Sometimes when we fail or fall, we learn the most. It's all about becoming more real. I think the real miracle in this isn't moral perfectionism. It's ongoing awareness, leading to integration. C.S. Lewis shows us through another character. You know Edmund from the last story? Who was the annoying one, but matures and blossoms. And in this story, shows real qualities. But when Eustace is feeling useless after the undragoning, Edmund doesn't tower over him like the Pharisee. He simply says, "You feel bad. I did worse. I betrayed people. I was a traitor." He doesn't enter in the competition stakes. Your shame's worse than mine. But he tries to normalize him, to say you're not alone in this. That is how transformation spreads. It becomes contagious, if it does. Not through moral superiority, look how good I am, or trying to look more spiritual than other people. That game that's so often played in churches. But through authenticity. When one person starts taking off their mask slowly, it can loosen the grip of shame on everyone else. That is what healthy community, what we're experimenting in, looks like. Not a group of people propping themselves up in each other's eyes like the Pharisee, but a group learning to live more congruently, where who we are on the inside and who we are on the outside start to match up a little bit. AA and the 12-step programs, it is a place where I have had the privilege of going to open meetings and seeing that. Church does not exist because people are sorted. Join our church if you're sorted. If you don't, Church exists because we aren't. A healthy church isn't a showroom for spiritual success or a courtroom for moral judgment. It's a place where people are learning, practicing, failing, trying again, and slowly becoming more themselves. The opposite of what the Pharisee was doing. It's about presence, not performance. This is at the heart of covenant relationship with each other. That's why you don't leave a church when it disappoints you. There's many good reasons for leaving a church. But it's not through not getting all your needs met or through being disappointed or not understanding something. All reasons why I've been tempted to leave a church. Because all that stuff and working through it can be the heart of what covenant is all about. Let me draw this together. Presence, not performance. The Pharisee isn't wicked. They get a hard time, the Pharisees, don't they? He's defended. The tax collector isn't holy. He's unguarded. And Jesus says the unguarded one goes home whole, not because he hates himself, but because he stops managing himself. Both men need healing. One needs to stop inflating. The other needs to stop deflating. Both need to learn to see themselves as they really are, as you really are, as I really am. Beloved, mixed, unfinished, yet held. Shedding isn't self-improvement. It's release. What gets removed in the process isn't your essence, isn't who you really are. That is revealed. It's the armor that you put on when you were small, scared, or alone that can go. And grace doesn't shame those strategies either. Weren't you stupid acting like that? And you still do it? That's not grace. Grace honors them. You are a young, fragile infant child trying to navigate this complicated world. Aren't you clever trying to defend yourself like that? But you don't have to hide anymore. Sometimes, how attractive does this sound to you? Sometimes the change looks becoming less impressive, or being comfortable being less impressive, less defended, more imperfect, more ordinary. Oh, the release of being ordinary. More tender, more alive. But that's why some of us resist it. Not because we're bad, but because it feels like death. The process can feel like death. And in a way it is. It's the death of a person you felt you had to be, and maybe feel that you have to be still, so that who you are can finally breathe and become who you really are.
Should
invites your life, your soul, your all. If you would like to come forward after the service for anointing, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, then feel free to. I won't come too close because I have got a little bit of a lurgy this morning, so I won't come too close. And I won't be hugging this morning. But as you go, whoever you are,